Hi everyone, I'm Associate Professor Sarah Weiss and welcome back to this special research skills video designed to equip you with hints, tips, and capabilities to become an even better public policy scholar. So I've just finished some yoga. I'm really excited to get started, and I think it's also an important reminder that as we take an online course together, it's still really important to look after our physical bodies, because with physical strength, mental strength will follow. So set aside any distractions, find a comfortable seat, and let's start learning. In today's research skills video, we are going to explore one of the most common, but also one of the perhaps most under-discussed areas of academic life: understanding journal articles. So in this short video, we're going to look at how can you better understand the content and structure of journal articles to make accessing their meaning easier for you, and also how can you use journal articles as a template to guide your own academic writing. So hopefully by the end of this short video, we will be across those two things: a better understanding of the structure of journal articles and how they express their content, and understanding journal articles as a way that you can design your own research essays. So why is understanding journal articles important? As a scholar, a journal article is the #1 output that you are required to produce. And throughout your master's degree, you'll be asked in a number of courses to produce research essays. These are really short form journal articles, and your thesis is kind of a practice for eventually being able to publish something that could be peer reviewed and accepted by your academic peers. Journal articles are also important because as people studying public policy, globalization, and governance, they usually provide the foundation for that learning. They're going to be our main source of material. So let's spend some time now figuring out, how do we better understand these things and how can they be a bit more accessible? Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand is the modus operandi of why academics write journal articles. There are some very instrumental reasons why we produce journal articles. The first being that if I don't write journal articles that are accepted by my scholarly peers, I will not have a job. So a lot of academics are trying to put out journal articles just to stay employed. But the more substantive and important reason that we produce journal articles is because it is our professional way of contributing to a discipline and a discussion about the topics in which we're interested. So the motivation behind a journal article is to produce a short piece of writing, usually 7,000 to 10,000 words, that's going to give us a more in-depth insight into one particular topic. And that's really important for you to understand when you're thinking about your own research essays. Even academics writing in-depth, scholarly reviewed journal articles are focusing those articles on one very, very narrowly defined and well-scoped topic. Each journal article is what I like to think of as the least publishable unit. So they've got one idea, they've got one thing they want to get across, and one thing they're going to focus on, and they do it really well. And that's a tip you should take away when you're thinking about your research essay topics in this and other classes. Narrow your scope. So the second thing that's going to help you when it comes to engaging with journal articles more easily and more successfully is to understand the formula of how most journal articles are designed. So if you know the formula, you can know what to expect. You can know which portions of the journal article are most relevant to you, because you don't have to read the whole thing every time. And you can start to really unpack the content. What's the formula? How do you know what to expect? I'm providing these slides for you online, so you can come back and have a look at these summary slides, but right now I'm going to go in depth into the 6 main parts of most journal articles. Keeping in mind that every journal has different requirements for its authors, and so it may not always appear exactly in these terms, but for the most part, these are the 6 sections or content areas that you could expect to see in most journal articles that you come across in your academic career. All right, so how are we going to start? Well, first there's going to be an introduction. Now, again, this can help you for writing your own research essays because each of the 6 sections that I'm going to outline for you now appear not only in journal articles, but these can be used as content guides for your own academic writing. And I'm outside today and I'm hoping that the buses going by are not too loud, but I thought you might all enjoy a bit of summer sunshine. So first in the introduction, the things that we want to get across are specifically, what is the problem? So how have you narrowed the scope? And secondly, what is the rationale for spending time writing this particular issue? So why does your research issue matter? In the introduction, you will also always see the aim of the research. And for the most part, academics will have at least one sentence in the introduction section of their articles that says, the aim of this article is to blah, 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 blah. That's a really, really good tip for you, and it will help your essay examiners if in your introduction somewhere you say, the aim of this research essay is to fill in the blank. Normally, a journal article introduction will also outline a small and very well-defined set of key questions that the article is seeking to answer. These are the research questions, and they're really important. And the most difficult thing with research questions is getting them defined well. Finally, in the introduction section of most journal articles, you are going to find a short paragraph that says, this article contributes to X. Most of the time, the scholars will say things like, this article contributes to the literature on insert the topic that they're talking about, and it also advances our understanding of insert the issue that they're specifically writing about. We must, as scholars, make clear what our contributions of our work are, because in order to be published... Timeout. Did you see my face just then? Yeah, that's what happens when you're trying to record a lot of lecture videos at home and you have small children. So here we go, back to the video. So, as I was just saying, we as scholars need to make clear what our contributions to the literature are in order to be published, because we want to be participating in this ongoing discussion or debate about the issues that we're researching. And that brings us to the next section that you're most likely to find in many journal articles, the literature review. Now, it is highly unlikely that it will actually be called a literature review. For instance, here from the Ho article, which we've had together on our second lecture in class, they've called their literature review Global Components Already in PA Literature. So it's very clear that they're referencing the literature, but they haven't said lit review. What the literature review aims to do is to provide a critical presentation of the key debates surrounding their issue or research question of interest. The other thing the literature seeks to do, and this is something that you can do in your own research essays, is to cleverly use citations of the existing literature to demonstrate and situate your own research expertise. So by citing other literature, these scholars are demonstrating that they are also experts in that literature. They've engaged with it, they've read it, and they're not just describing or summarizing what other people have written, they are actually critiquing it. And so that's where this third point here, choose a side, comes in. Very often, literature reviews will present a particular academic debate, and part of this critical critique of the literature is the author or authors telling you, the reader, which side of the debate they're on, and also using the literature to explain why. And normally what they will do is to demonstrate how other authors, so their scholarly peers, how those other authors have made really good arguments. They're using other people's literature to explain why, for instance, in this example, why global considerations in public administration are important. So the literature review is not just about description and summary, it's about demonstrating your expertise across a particular research area, and it's about you showing critical engagement with that literature and positioning yourself relative to that theoretical debate. So that's the lit review. The third component of a journal article that you're most likely to see is a methods section. Now here I've moved to a different article where we're thinking about how methods can differ. Sometimes methods are a review of documents or a review of literature. Other times in big quantitative studies, they might be a large-scale survey or an econometric analysis. The methods section, regardless of what type of method you use, is going to tell you how is this author, or how are you as the research essay author, going to tackle the research questions you've presented. So in the methods section, we would expect to see a brief outline of the method that you've chosen, a rationale for why that method is appropriate to your particular study, and in the very best methods sections, you're also going to see a brief discussion of the limitations of that method. So where does it fall short? How could it be improved? It's really important when we're writing scholarly work that we don't attempt to be the I am the best author ever. What we want to do is to note that we have really strong arguments while at the same time accepting and highlighting some of the limitations of our studies. That's going to really improve your academic writing, and it's something that you will see throughout many journal articles. So there are three more common sections to academic journal articles, and I'm going to go through these in some detail now. So, unsurprisingly, in an academic journal article, and certainly in your research papers, we might expect to find some findings. So this is usually a presentation of your own data. Now that might be primary data, which is data that you've gone out and collected either through doing firsthand surveys or questionnaires or interviews, focus groups, whatever. Or it could be, and this will be the case for many of you, particularly in short research essays that you're writing for your classes, secondary data. So secondary data is where someone else has done the research for you. You're now accessing their findings to come up with new ideas and findings of your own. What we'll see in the findings section is a fairly descriptive and brief summary of what you actually found in looking at that data. And again, going back to my earlier discussion about limitations, a really good article will have a short section that provides some caveats or some discussion of the limitation of these findings. So if you've done a 2,500 word research essay and you have found the solution to world peace, not many people are going to believe you. We want to know what are the limitations of those findings and what further research needs to be done. And most journal articles will present this material towards the end of the findings section. Then you're likely to see what we call the discussion or synthesis section of the article. So this is really the you doing your job as a scholar to tell us what this all means. What do the findings mean relative to the theory or ideas that you presented in the literature review? So this is where you're taking that literature, which normally will give you some kind of analytical lens, and you're going to apply that to the findings to tell us what they mean. You may have identified a new idea or a new theory or some information that previous studies simply have not been able to offer. So the discussion section is also going to highlight that. Anything novel, unique, or interesting that's come out of your own work. So this is what you would expect to see in the discussion section of a journal article, and also it's what we look for when we're grading your research essays. The discussion section is not the last and final discussion that we're ever going to have on this topic, and so that means it's also a terrific place to say, what are the new questions that this study has raised? What future research could be done now that I've established these findings? And again, and I go back to this, scholars tend to be very humble people, although I'm sure you've come across some with some terrific egos, but we really want to acknowledge and start to put out there into public the limitations of our studies, the limitations of our ideas, with the hope that this is going to spark future debate and future discussion. So in the discussion section, we might also see a few limitations or questions that couldn't be answered in the particular article. And certainly that's a technique that you can legitimately adopt for your own research. And finally, and unsurprisingly, you are going to see in most journal articles a conclusion. The conclusion is going to do two things if it's a great conclusion. The first is that it is going to provide a summary of what came before. So it's going to tell you what was the aim of this article, what questions did we try to answer, what techniques or methods did we use, what literature or analytical concepts were engaged, what did we find. So that's going to be the summary of those first 5 parts of the journal article. Now that's a good conclusion. But to raise a conclusion to great, what we want to see then is, so what? What does this all mean? And so a really terrific conclusion is going to go one step further, and it's going to present the implications of the study, the so what factor. And for your own research essays, if you can remember to leave yourself enough space at the end to include that implication section, you are going to have a much stronger research essay. Okay, here is my final tip for journal articles made easier. So how can you better understand and engage with sometimes very dense academic literature? Did you guys ever take high school chemistry and you had like a really fat chemistry book and you had to do the problems at home, but all the answers were at the back? Yeah, I had one of those books. Probably you guys, you didn't know the books, you probably had some app or it was online. But anyway, back in the Stone Age, we had these really huge books and the answers to the quizzes would be in the back section. Now, it was always really tempting to just flip to the back and make sure you had the right answer first. With a journal article, most answers are actually right up the front in something we call the abstract, which is a précis of the entire article, and normally it's going to give away the conclusion. So, in order to test your own comprehension, to really check and see, am I understanding the academic literature that I'm reading, I strongly recommend that when you start the article, you cover up the abstract. Don't read it. Read the article, stop, take a moment, and jot down, what did I think this article was really about? What did it tell me? What were the key points? Okay? It might be 3 dot points, but just summarize for yourself what you took away from the article. Then it's time to flip to the back of the metaphorical chemistry book, in this case, the abstract, and check and see, were your ideas, were the things that you took away from this article the same as what the authors presented in the abstract? And if there's pretty good alignment there, then you can feel really proud in yourself that actually you have read and understood a complex academic journal article. So that's it from me for today. I hope this research skills video on journal articles made easier has helped you both to better understand how to break down a journal article and take more away from it, and also to take away some tips and hints on the types of content and sections to include in your own academic writing. So wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and we'll see you on the internet.